October 2022. Lines wrapped around digital storefronts and retail blocks worldwide under the cold glow of autumn television screens as millions of hands downloaded Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, an entertainment milestone that would shatter internal records by generating over $1 billion in its first 10 days of release. It arrived as a bold, uncompromising statement from its primary development studio, Infinity Ward, who were determined to fundamentally reshape the identity of the most lucrative first-person shooter franchise in human history. The executive and creative leadership team wanted to strip away the fast-paced, arcade-like elements that had defined the series for nearly 2 decades and replace them with a deliberate, high-stakes tactical military simulation. They envisioned a gritty, highly immersive combat arena where positioning, map control, and tactical patience completely superseded rapid mechanical twitch reflexes and frantic movement exploits. Yet this grandiose artistic pivot towards cinematic realism would instantly collide with a brutal underlying reality of the modern live service entertainment ecosystem. Within months, this meticulously constructed tactical apparatus would trigger a historic crisis in player attention, forcing a multi-billion-dollar corporate empire to utterly cannibalize its own design philosophy in a desperate bid to save its recurring microtransaction engine. To fully comprehend the sheer scale of this mechanical reversal, one must analyze the specific, highly controversial design adjustments executed by the development team to enforce their vision of a realistic battlefield. The most radical subversion of traditional franchise rules was the systematic removal of classic red dots from the minimap user interface. For nearly 15 years, firing an unsuppressed weapon automatically flagged a player's exact geometric location on the radar, creating a reliable high-velocity stream of spatial information that drove constant map movement and predictable player rotations. By hiding these red dots, the developers threw the player base into a state of severe sensory disorientation, forcing them to rely on a generic top-of-screen compass and directional audio. This audio design was itself amplified to an extreme degree via the studio's updated engine architecture, rendering footstep sounds so incredibly loud and distinct that running through a concrete hallway felt like stomping on a bass drum. Suddenly, navigating the map at a high speed was no longer an aggressive tactical choice. It was a loud, fatal mistake that broadcasted your exact approach to every enemy within a 50-meter radius. This systematic suppression of player velocity was further compounded by a deliberate overhaul of the game's character movement and animation pipelines.
The developers aggressively removed a highly popular emergent mechanic known as slide cancelling, an animation exploit that aggressive players had spent years mastering to refresh their tactical sprint cycles and bypass the standard momentum penalties of sliding. In its place, they implemented heavy, realistic animation delays, dramatically increasing the time it took to transition from a full sprint to raising a weapon's iron sights, a metric known in design circles as sprint to fire time. Visual clutter was pushed to an absolute maximum, introducing heavy camera shake, blinding muzzle smoke, and erratic visual recoil that obscured the target the moment a player pulled the trigger. The game ceased to reward high-speed mechanical dexterity and began actively protecting passive defensive strategies, constructing a reality where the safest, most efficient path to victory was to sit completely motionless inside a dark room, pre-aiming a doorway while listening for the booming footsteps of an approaching opponent. The systemic flaw in this tactical realism approach is a profound, fundamental mismatch with core consumer psychology and the specific behavioural loops that sustain interactive arena shooters. Slower movement mechanics combined with omniscient acoustic cues create an environment of extreme psychological friction for anyone trying to play actively. When the penalty for moving across an open street is instantaneous death from a hidden sniper or a pre-aimed assault rifle, the player base undergoes a collective behavioural shift toward absolute tactical paralysis. The gameplay loop quickly degenerates from a dynamic, unpredictable martial dance into a stale, passive exercise in angle holding. When an entire lobby refuses to move out of fear of being heard, the kinetic energy of the match completely flatlines, causing match timers to frequently expire before either team could reach the required score limit. This structural stagnation dragged out the experience into an agonizing, boring chore that starved the human brain of its expected high-frequency dopamine rewards. In the cutthroat realm of contemporary AAA publishing, an unengaging, slow-paced game loop is not merely a creative misstep, it is a catastrophic threat to corporate survival. The modern franchise does not generate its historic billions of dollars through initial software sales alone. It relies entirely on a continuous, hyper-monetized ecosystem of seasonal battle passes, premium operator cosmetic bundles, and licensed crossover events. For this recurring financial machine to operate at peak efficiency, it requires massive, highly active server populations filled with casual consumers who log in daily. When the casual player base, the vast majority of the community who lack the time or desire to methodically check every single corner of a realistically cluttered building, found themselves repeatedly obliterated by stationary defenders, they simply stopped playing.
Corporate earnings calls and leaked internal telemetry data from subsequent quarters revealed a devastating drop-off in active user engagement, a financial bleeding so severe that it threatened to derail the long-term economic projections of the entire live service ecosystem. Facing a full-blown commercial crisis, executive leadership realised that the lofty artistic pursuit of tactical realism was a luxury that their profit margins could no longer afford. They immediately mandated a drastic emergency mechanical U-turn for the subsequent instalment, Modern Warfare 3, handing the developmental reins to Sledgehammer Games with explicit instructions to systematically undo the foundational design pillars established by Infinity Ward. The classic minimap where dots were immediately restored, providing instant visual information that forced defensive players out of hiding. Footstep audio was severely dampened via specialised in-game perks, stripping stationary players of their acoustic radar. Sprint to fire times were drastically slashed, reload animations could suddenly be cancelled midway through, and character movement speed was boosted across the board. It was a complete, unceremonious execution of the tactical philosophy, proving that when high art realism threatens recurring revenue, the realism will always be the first thing dragged to the chopping block. This frantic retreat back to pure arcade velocity reached its absolute architectural apex with the development of the revolutionary Omni-movement system introduced under the Treyarch era. No longer content with merely restoring old movement speeds, engineers completely redesigned the baseline mechanics of character navigation from the ground up. For the first time in the history of the franchise, players were granted the ability to sprint, slide, and dive prone in any direction, fully forward, laterally sideways, or completely backward, with seamless 360-degree fluid momentum. This mechanical overhaul effectively transformed characters from heavy, realistic military operators into hyper-agile, gravity-defying action movie icons, capable of diving through windows sideways while firing automatic weapons mid-air. It was the ultimate explicit declaration that the franchise was abandoning any lingering pretense of authentic military tactics, replacing realistic human limitations with an intense, over-the-top kinetic spectacle designed specifically to maximize high-speed clip generation on short-form social media platforms. This whiplash-inducing evolutionary arc exposes a profound, lingering philosophical rift regarding what a modern live service product is fundamentally supposed to be. Developers frequently possess a genuine, admirable desire to innovate, to push the boundaries of their graphic engines, and to explore mature, immersive simulation design that treats a military setting with artistic and mechanical weight. Yet inside the rigid constraints of a corporate ecosystem dictated by weekly active user metrics and player spending graphs, a game is never allowed to exist merely as a self-contained piece of art.
It must operate as a frictionless, highly habit-forming consumer environment. The moment a design choice introduces a layer of cognitive friction or strategic difficulty that drives away casual players, the corporate apparatus will ruthlessly step in to flatten the experience, ensuring that the dopamine delivery pipeline remains entirely uninhibited. Ultimately, this massive mechanical reversal serves as a stark cautionary tale about the absolute supremacy of data-driven telemetry over individual creative identity. The multi-year experiment with tactical realism proved definitively that in the realm of mass-market entertainment, what is realistically authentic is often mechanically unplayable for the general public. By forcing a return to high-velocity movement and arcade-style visual clarity, the corporate overseers successfully re-stabilised their player retention metrics, ensuring that the multi-billion-dollar monetisation wheel continues to spin smoothly well into the future.
But this financial salvation came at the cost of total creative homogenisation, sending a clear, chilling message to game designers across the industry. Your artistic vision is entirely secondary to the survival of the live service loop. Do you prefer the slow, deliberate tension of a tactical shooter, where every single step carries a permanent risk? Or are you glad that the franchise abandoned its realistic ambitions to return to its fast-paced, high-flying arcade roots? Drop a comment.